Hi, my name is Eddie Velasquez, and today I'd like to take a look at a couple of the major mechanics at play in my level, Jack's Ascent. Specifically, I want to take a look at these buds, our wind hazard, and the stone that we need in order to exit the level. So if we come in and we start our level, we can see that the player can interact with all of these different buds here. And each of them is going to do a different thing here. So this first one is going to pop out, and it's a permanent growth. It plays that audible cue, and then it expands itself out to allow the player to use it for a number of uses. In this case, the player can use it as a slide. We also have timed growths. When the player interacts with it, it plays a different sound, followed by another sound informing them that it's going to go away. We also have another use. As you can see, the player, when they overlapped with this wind volume, was shoved to a predetermined location. If the player crosses into that volume after the wind has stopped, it simulates the wind having died down and the player is unaffected. The player can also use these growths to stop the wind from affecting them at all, allowing them access to areas they previously couldn't get into. Another use for the growth, a very specialized use, is as a pusher for our exit stone. That's going to trigger the stone to roll down and open the level so that way we can leave. Now, if we take a look at each of the blueprints that we just went over, we'll see exactly how they work. Now, using a BPI interactions that I created, the grow event is going to be triggered when it receives the message, and if it is false for not being grown. That is the default. The default is false. So when the plant is grown, it's going to do one of two things depending on the growth type that we set in the editor. If it is a wither, then it is going to be true. It's going to set a timer that we can adjust in the editor. It's going to play a different sound than the standard grow, and it's going to grow out that growth to its predetermined scale. If it is a grow, i.e. a permanent growth, then it'll be false. It'll play another sound, and then it'll just go straight to the grow. Now the wither, when it does do its steal and it grows the plant out, it also sets the timer that is going to trigger the event to be pulling back in. When this happens, we're going to set one timer to allow a regrowth to happen, resetting our isGrown boolean up here. And we're going to clear our timer for this one right here. This is a hard locked timer so that the cooldown is always that. We can't change the cooldown for that. When the wither happens, we're going to play a sound for the player, and we're also going to give them a delay of 1.5 seconds before it starts to pull in, and they are going to be subject to wherever they're at that moment. Next, if we move over to the wind hazard, this hazard is going to kick off as soon as the level starts playing. And if we come over to the viewport, we'll see exactly how it works. We've got the volume itself. It's going to start at the scene root. We have the endpoint and we have the player endpoint. Now, this is going to come into play when the timeline is played. It's going to play the sound, and it's going to move that wind volume box across a point from the default scene root to the wind endpoint, updating the position along the way. So as that happens, once that happens, we're going to trigger and start our looping event where it's just going to keep playing the wind over and over again. And this actually allows us to change and adjust how fast the wind is blowing. Now, once the wind blows and it overlaps with either the character or a growth, we're going to check. If it is the player, we're going to interact with them by moving them along a timeline to that predetermined player end location, which is that green cone, hidden when the game is running. If it overlaps with a blocker, then it's going to stop where it's at. It's going to begin looping and just go over and over and over again until that blocker is no longer in the way, which is a possibility because we can incorporate timed blockers. Lastly, we want to take a look at the stone. The stone is relatively simple. And what happens is when the specific growth that we determine in the editor overlaps with the stone itself, we're going to trigger the roll ball event, and that's going to come down. That's where we get our sound going. That's where we get the movement of the ball. It's a scripted event along the splines that I've created, and it's just going to knock, hit, roll away. And once it gets into the cloud, it just simulates physics and it disappears and drops off. All of this is accomplished through using an interaction component, which we saw when we looked at the buds. And that is going to be created when we start the game. That's that HUD with the crosshair. And we hide the the orange and the press E to interact until it is determined that what it is pointing at within range is a valid target. And the way that we do that is using a raycast. And that raycast, the line trace is looking specifically for interactable objects. When it hits those interactable objects, that's going to return that true, giving us the growth or the collectibles, which is just a simple interact and disappear component. Now, when they are interacted with by pressing the E key, provided it is an interactable, we're going to send messages. If this message is received and can have something done with it in the associated blueprint, then it will. In this case, grow will grow and collect will collect. Now, the collection, as I said before, simple, just disappearing and hiding of the blueprint, and then that's where these come in. These variables are incremented up in the user interface for the end game. But outside of that, that concludes my presentation of the major mechanics that we have here in my level, Jack's Ascent. Thank you for your time.